This has to be one of the most incredible stories in American history. It's a story about jaw-dropping ambition, wealth that's almost impossible to imagine, and a fall so complete it's become this timeless cautionary tale. This is the story of the Vanderbilt family.
And this quote, this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. The Vanderbilt dynasty wasn't brought down by some business rival or a stock market crash. Nope, the enemy came from within. It was a product of their own unbelievable success. So really what you're looking at here is a clash between two totally different ways of thinking. On one side, you've got the founder, Cornelius Vanderbilt. His weapons were speed and control. And on the other side, you've got his descendants, and their only weapon was luxury.
Okay, so let's go all the way back to the beginning, to the guy who built this entire empire from absolute scratch.
Cornelius Vanderbilt's rise was just insane. I mean, this guy was born with nothing. At 16, he borrows $100 from his mom to buy one tiny boat. From that single boat, he goes on to completely dominate steamship travel, and then, in this brilliant move, he pivots and basically takes over America's entire railroad system. Everything he did boiled down to just three things: speed, control, and efficiency. He didn't care about comfort, he didn't care about status. All he cared about was making his operations faster, bigger, and more dominant than anyone else's, period.
And that obsession, it totally shaped how he thought about money. For Cornelius, wealth had one and only one purpose. His business strategy was absolutely brutal. He didn't just compete with people, he destroyed them. He'd start these insane price wars, sometimes even offering to ship stuff for free, just to bleed his rivals until they went bankrupt. The goal wasn't to win, the goal was total domination.
And the result of all that? Well, by the time he died, he was worth over $100 million. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that was more money than the entire United States Treasury had in its vaults. He was literally richer than the U.S. government.
But here's the crazy part. Even with all that money, he lived a pretty simple life. No giant palaces, no crazy parties. He lived and breathed this one rule. Wealth was a tool, a weapon to get more power. It was never, ever about personal pleasure.
And this is where the story takes a sharp turn. Because once the founder was gone, the very thing holding the empire together started to crumble.
Now, his son, William, actually did a great job. He managed to double the fortune. But when William died, so did that ironclad discipline Cornelius had drilled into the family. The money was now in the hands of heirs who had zero of the founder's restraint.
And without that discipline, the whole point of having the money just flipped completely. It wasn't about building power anymore. It was about showing off.
I mean, the contrast is just night and day. Cornelius invested inward. He poured money back into his railroads, into making things more efficient. His heirs, they spent outward on massive Fifth Avenue mansions, European-style castles, and parties that cost a fortune. The money was just gushing out, not being put to work.
And that's the key. No one had to come and take the Vanderbilt fortune. There was no hostile takeover, no corporate raider. The family literally ate its own empire from the inside out.
And boy, did they consume it fast. The collapse was just as swift and spectacular as the rise had been.
Now, sure, other things were happening. New taxes came in, the railroad industry wasn't the monopoly it used to be. But the real problem, the killer, was internal. The heirs had no new strategy. They were just living off the profits of an engine that was slowly running out of gas.
This chart just says it all, doesn't it? Look at this. You see the massive fortune Cornelius built, you see William double it, and then, bam, it just nosedives into the ground. In just a couple of decades, it's pretty much all gone.
And that's the unbelievable ending to this story. By the 1930s, the family that was once richer than the entire United States was effectively wiped off the financial map. Many of the descendants were flat broke.
So, what do we take away from all this? Well, the story leaves us with a legacy and a lesson about money and power that is just brutal. Today, yeah, we all know the Vanderbilt name, but it's kind of a hollow fame, you know? The real power is completely gone. Those incredible mansions they built are museums now, and the railroads that were the bedrock of their empire are owned by other companies. Which brings us to this core lesson. Cornelius Vanderbilt proved how incredibly hard it is to build an empire from nothing. But his grandkids, they proved that keeping it is even harder. So we're back to that central conflict, right? The builder, he mastered discipline, and his reward was an empire. The heirs, well, they mastered luxury,
And their reward was nothing. Oblivion. Two different paths, two wildly different endings.
The final verdict from history here is just crystal clear. It doesn't matter how much money you start with. If there's no discipline, no strategy, no purpose other than just to spend it, it will always, always collapse.
And that leaves all of us with a really big question to think about, doesn't it? The Vanderbilts answered it in two totally different ways. One created, the other consumed. Their story kind of forces all of us to ask, what is wealth actually for?